I don't care who you're talking to, every other country, especially the bad ones, the various actors, Russia, China, North Korea, they are terrified of us. Terrified. I don't care what you hear on the media. I know for a fact they are. You know why? Because we volunteered to fight. Good morning, and welcome to the Republican Party's first annual.
Yes. And we're thrilled that you're our first person. Why don't you just, Congressman Morgan Luttrell, you're a new congressman. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background for people who might not know you?
I am absolutely a freshman congressional member. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
We're excited to have you.
I'm fortunate enough to be raised in my district. I'm the representative for Congressional District 8 in the state of Texas, which is Montgomery County up to Walker, and then we span to Harris County, Cypress and Katy, out to Senate, and Polk. So it's a very hybrid district, city and country converging together, which is, it can be challenging at times, but a lot of fun. I graduated from Willis High School, grew up on a horse ranch. My twin brother and my mother and father, quarter horse ranch. I learned a lot, getting up every morning, feeding, watering horses. And I think that
I grew up on a farm.
So you can appreciate the value of something more valuable than you sleeping in. You have to take care of those animals. Went to Sam Houston State University, which before the lines were redrawn was in the district, so high school and college inside the old district. So I'm a Bearcat, a proud one. Left for the Navy, spent 14 years in Naval Special Warfare. I enlisted actually. I was an enlisted sailor for 8 years and then commissioned, and I retired as a lieutenant. After I left the Navy, I went back to school at the University of Texas at Dallas and got an advanced degree in applied cognition and neuroscience, focusing on traumatic brain injury in veterans. That transcended the veteran space into first responders. My research was on memory retrievals. I graduated with my master's. I actually started my PhD. Was in my first year and got a call from Secretary Perry, Rick Perry, our former governor, while he was at the Department of Energy. And I went up there and stood up the Office of Artificial Intelligence, which is kind of funny because I went from the Navy to brain science to artificial intelligence. It just, God has a path for everybody, and mine has been definitely a curvy line.
I tell my daughters there's lots of different ways up that mountain.
There is. There's a foothold and a finger hold everywhere. So I was at the DOE for a few years, working with the secretary, and then left there, went back to school on the East Coast, and got my executive education there. Came home and started a small business where I did plumbing and lighting renovations. Congressman Brady, the former member that held the district, announced his retirement. Great man, such a humble guy, so well loved in D.C. Right, you cannot find anyone in Washington D.C. or anywhere that does not think
wonderful
that guy, sweetest guy. I often get the phrase, "Hey, you have really big shoes to fill." So my response to him, I had to quit doing it too because I think it made him uncomfortable. So I was like, "Well, he wears a size 5, and I wear a 14, so I mean, what am I saying?" So he's a good sport about it. A lot of prayer went into this. I have no political background whatsoever, or didn't. So traveling around the district, meeting with family and friends, and hey, we guys think about this. It was actually brought to my attention, hey, would you consider this? And we were, Leslie and I, my wife Leslie and I, which I would not be doing this if it weren't for her. And my 2 wonderful sons, Gunnar and Lincoln. But we inevitably made a decision and went all in, and we took it outright, which was great. Definitely a different dynamic. Having coming from the military and the wars and academia and whatnot, what have you, this was the learning curve was extremely vertical, but we got through it. Eyes, ears wide open, head on a swivel ever since.
So I'm going to ask you a fun question.
Sure.
My brother-in-law, he's deceased, but he was an identical twin. And he would tell stories, he and his brother, about like they didn't want to do something, or there was a class. Did you and your brother ever play?
We did. So we switched classes.
And you maybe don't want your sons to know.
No, it's fine. I'm pretty transparent with my boys. My brother and I are identical. We're identical enough back in the day. We still look very similar. Like if he was standing there and I wasn't, you couldn't tell the difference. When we're standing side by side, we've aged a little bit where you can tell the difference. Back in the grade school years, we switched quite a bit. And we actually switched in college because I was in English class, and unfortunately my brother caught the teacher in the hallway and asked him where the classroom was, so it kind of
Was stuck.
yeah, we were like done. So he called him out. I think that was one of the only times we got caught. And then of course there's this legendary story about he and I making the switch while he was going through SEAL training. And it's declassified now, but I was still at Sam as a college student, went out to see him, and we did the old switcheroo, and I did an entire day of SEAL training as a civilian, which I won't recommend doing. And we didn't get caught,
Wow.
but it eventually came out. And unfortunately, it came out before I entered SEAL training, so they knew. So when I showed up, it was, I got a little extra attention.
So I'm glad you brought up the military and being a SEAL. You know, I'm older than you, obviously, and you know, I was young when the Vietnam War was going on. And, you know, to remember those days of parents, you know, my parents watching the numbers, you know, to see if my brother, if he was going to be called up. I've always wondered, would I have the courage, you know, if I would go back? I mean, I think it takes, or it seems to me it would take a special person. You know, what made you choose the military? And, you know,
Most
I mean, I
ev-
think
yeah.
you have to have courage and something inside.
Courage presents itself in many different ways. For my family, the majority of males served in the military, and quite a few females served in the military. Throughout the history of this country and before, we've done a good job at tracing our lineage. And it was just something that we had always, it was always instilled in us. Now, the SEAL thing came up. My father spoke about the frogmen in Vietnam. My father was in Vietnam, so he spoke about the frogmen, the demolition teams and the SEALs that were in Vietnam. And oddly enough, so military was inevitable. I guess the best way to say it.
In your blood.
Yeah, it was in our blood. Sense of service. My father and my grandfather was like, "Hey, look, you know, if you really want to love something, protect it." And nothing against anybody that doesn't. That's just
Right.
that's how we were raised. And there was a documentary that came out a long time ago called The Silent Option. And the guy's voice was awesome, and he was talking about the things that SEALs do and how they're always on the front line and they're in these miserable situations and they take out the bad guys. The hair on the back of our neck stood up. I'm like, that's what we're going to do. But nobody knew anything about it. Nobody knew how you even get started, how you become one. They just knew that it was in the Navy. So we started at a very young age with the ambition that that's what we're going to do. And we did it. And when I graduated, we were the fifth set of identical twins that ever made it through the training.
Wow.
So this was really cool. There's a couple more now. That's pretty rare. Brothers, there's a large number of brothers, very slim number of twin brothers, and then we have the generational gaps where I've served with a lot of men whose sons are SEALs now. I can't imagine the honor that is. So that's why we did it. I hope, you know, I don't want my sons, you know, if they don't want to. If they want to serve, that's fine. I'm hoping there's no wars going on. That's another one of my jobs as a congressional member to keep that from happening. There's always seems to be a tipping point. My oldest is 10. He's starting to ask questions about what Daddy did in the military. So there's no military memorabilia in my house. We keep that chapter closed. But if it is something that they engage in, I'm happy to give my perspective, and if inevitably they go that path, then you know that's God's will. So I'll support them 100%.
Well, you know, my father was World War II veteran, so I grew up seriously on bedtime stories about World War II, and you know, he believed and made friendships, like I'm sure you did. That he, you know, even when he passed away, I mean, his lieutenant colonel was 90. It was in January. Drove by himself across Nebraska to go to my father's funeral. And so, I mean, I know you relate to that those ties that, unless you go through that experience,
Sure.
you have. But again, when you flip and you're a parent, and when the Vietnam War was going on, then you've got sort of a different perspective. You know, you believe in your country, you fought for your
I
country.
hope I pick up the mentality my mother had and has still to this day. When she had two sons in the war, like, and one time at the same time together, and anytime she was asked, she was like, "If my boys have to give their lives for the country, that's how I raised them." She'll tell you that straight to your face right now. She's like, I'm the proudest mother because I raised two men that protected their country.
So we realize, Morgan, about what's going on in the military, and that it's harder for them to recruit today. So I guess, what would you tell those young men?
Yeah, unfortunately, recruitment is down, and it's a shame. Now, there's a narrative that's been created, in my opinion, that needs to change. And we as veterans are really trying to change. Now, when I joined the military, you had Rambo, you had Commando, you had all these awesome Top Gun. You know, these movies that just like, yes, I want to be a pilot, or I want to be a Green Beret, just like Rambo Reagan and it was a sense of, you know, and like when Arnold was out killing 5,000 people, and he got a scratch up, he was invincible, and that was so infectious. Like, man, how great would that be to go around and blow things up and get rid of bad guys? But as you fast forward through our last two wars, what I keep hearing and seeing is all the negative. Hey, look, if you go into the military, you're going to be broken. If you go into the military, you're going to have something's going to be wrong with you. You're going to have post-traumatic stress disorder, you're going to have traumatic brain injury. There's something's going to be wrong. That's just not true. It is absolutely the reverse of that. Sure, absolutely. There will be things that happen to you. Something you walk down the street and get the same thing. So when I have the opportunity to get in front of our younger generation, those that are upcoming, they're going to take, you know, the flag and run with it. It's like, hey, be proud of that. Yeah, it's supposed to be hard. Sometimes it's supposed to be miserable. You know, you're putting yourself into a situation that you're defending those who cannot defend themselves. And that is the best thing that you can do. It's so rewarding. And I don't have post-traumatic stress. And I tell people all the time, it's like, hey, I don't have that crap. I spent my entire career giving it to other people, and I'm really good at it. So when I walk around and have the ability to chat somebody up, like, go get it, man. You get to see the world. You get to learn things and do things. I was responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment. I was engaging with leadership across the globe, kings, for God's sakes, you know? And you have the opportunity to do that in the military. It's just such a great space to live in. And we need it. You know,
Definitely.
the entire world, I don't care who you're talking to, every other country, especially the bad ones, the various actors, Russia, China, North Korea, they are terrified of us. Terrified. I don't care what you hear on the media. I know for a fact they are. You know why? Because we volunteered to fight. Our men and women walk up like, I want to do that. Everywhere else, they tell you, they make you do it. But here, we dig it.
Yeah.
Especially in Texas and these southern states. And I give California props too. They send a lot of people in the military. Like, hey, look, you know what? I'm down. Let's go.
So to sort of pivot, using your military experience, how has that helped you, or has it helped you?
That's
getting
quite a
into
bit.
Congress?
Quite a bit. I lean on that a lot. First and foremost, humility. I always say when things are dusting up and everybody's getting emotional and everything, things are kind of coming off the rails, I will look at either my colleagues on both sides, my staff, whomever, and say, hey, look, take a hard look around. Is there nobody shooting at us right now? Things are not that bad. Take a wrap up, take a breath, and let's talk through this calmly. So humility is one thing. Integrity, tact, and character. Now, things that I carry with me up there wholeheartedly. I learned all that from the military. I praise in public, both sides. My Democratic colleagues, my Republican colleagues. If I have to criticize, if I have to wire brush somebody, take it behind closed doors. In my opinion, I learned that from some of the greatest leaders in the military. And I don't care how bad you mess up, if you take them back and you have to do constructive criticism, do it where everybody else can't see it. And when you walk out, this is what I wish would happen. Would happen is there's nothing more effective than a united front. Let's get behind the burner, get behind the minivan, and just beat the snot out of each other. But when we walk out in front of the American public, we are one team and one dream. The mission is America. I wish, those are the things that the military taught me. And I do my best every day when I'm up there. Before I even walk into the Capitol, I roll that through my head.
Do you think you hear a lot about, not the lack of respect for the flag, that people aren't proud to be an American, that the younger generation, that they've sort of lost faith. And I hear that a lot. I hear it within the Republican Party. I hear it just with friends and what you see in the media. Do you think it's more how the media is slanting it? I mean, is there bipartisanship going on? Because all we see out, back home is all the negative. And I hear a lot from people that I think they get very disheartened.
Absolutely. I can appreciate that. So where we come from, we're proud of our American flag. And I think it lives in pockets. And that's just misinformation or uninformed. Social media and media in itself has just taken on this whole different role than we ever expected back when it first showed up. And people, if they get their information from a specific spot, and that specific spot is either skewed one way or the other, that is their passion, correct? My sons know exactly what this flag means. My sons can tell you what all the stripes mean, what the colors mean, what the stars mean. And we do that in our family because we've lost family members. We know that our forefathers and mothers that have gone before us that sacrificed so much is the reason this guy right here is flying. And that may not necessarily be happening as much as it should. But then it's our job to help educate. Remember, if you can remember back before 9/11, it was pretty similar, right? And I pray that we never have another 9/11 event that happens in the country. But remember how united you can see these flags. Everybody's united behind every single color you need to right here. You can make it out all these colors right here, and that's important. And to the second part of your question was,
well, how for the person who's at home that gets disheartened and feels
oh,
like there's nothing,
bipartisanship.
There's nothing going, they're not getting anything
And
done.
I'm going to give you Morgan's perspective and opinion. Okay, just mine alone. I don't speak for any other member. Just Morgan. I work every single day. Every day, I either meet another member from across the aisle, or I re-engage with somebody that I've already met. And I do that with my Republican colleagues and my Democratic colleagues. And the reason that I do that is not like you see it on TV. Those dust-ups and those hyper-aggressive moments that are put out for the American public are made for TV most of the time. Most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. Okay? I've often said this, Washington, D.C. is very theatrical. When that TV comes on or we're in a spot that the media's standing around, it goes nuclear. It does. And it riles the base up. Left or right. It does. And when it's walking down the halls or it's engaging in offices, it is such a cordial conversation. I have Democratic colleagues on the other side that we co-sponsored legislation together. Mr. Correa out of California, very, very focused on the border. Great ideas. Yes, sir. Let's work together. Let's get this accomplished. A lot of our political perspectives do not coalesce at all, but that's okay. But there's some that do, and that's when we get together. Like, hey, let's dig in on Miss Jacobs from San Diego. Her political views are way off, away from ours, where we're from, but she has great ideas about children. Right? Hey, yeah, absolutely. Let's help them out. I mean, you don't see it on TV. One of my favorite relationships. And when I say this out loud, my district, they get irritated, But one of my favorite members to chat with, who is such an engaging and endearing man to me, asked me, hey, tell me about the break. How's Gunnar and Lincoln doing? How was your Christmas? Tell me about the fishing trip. All this kind of stuff. Al Green is the most genuine guy. But when he activates, when he turns on, Mr. Green, I'm gonna go my way over here. You do your thing, because he represents 800,000 people. He is the voice for 800,000 people and has been for over 20 years. He speaks the language of his district, as well as my other Democratic and Republican colleagues. And as a veteran, somebody who served this country in 2 wars, I will never, ever hate the individuals that I fought so hard to protect and that my teammates lost their lives for. Never do that. So it has come for me, which before I was elected, it was different. They're not my enemy. They're my opponent. And make no mistake, I take notes. I think that's a brilliant move. I'm jotting that down. I'm going to use it. So that's how we, as a conservative Christian Republican, I take my values and I sit down with them. I'm like, this is why I believe the way I do. And they do the same thing to me. All right, well, I'm in the majority, so we're going to go my way. Because it'll flip eventually.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the relationships, you're not taking the opportunity to make the relationships up there. We're too divisive. If we don't bring this thing together where we work, and it's designed to go back and forth. It is.
Well, and you study history, and I mean, that's what I really, one, I do believe God's grace you study your revolutionary history. I think there were so many times that we shouldn't have won that war. But, we survived the Civil War. We survived the Vietnam War. That was a war that tore this country apart. We survived the 2 world wars. And I hope that this is a period of time that it will go back and forth. But I think people get so disheartened in social media. Great in the sense of, you can I have a friend who lives in New Zealand, I can keep up with what she's doing. But there is a negativity.
I tell people not to watch news.
Yeah.
And if you have to watch news, watch multiple channels, and then create your own medium between all the different
I think
opinions.
that's a great suggestion.
And if there's something that's on media, social media, and your favorite channel, and it is spinning you up, don't let it ruin your day. And if it's gone in two days, chances are it was nothing that you need to be concerned about. If it's there for a week, pay attention to it. But these hot buttons, because media, they're designed to get the ratings, and I guess the way I can say this, because I've been in situations before where the next day I'm watching the media and it's what I was a part of. I'm like, that is nothing close to what happened. Zero. Yeah. And I come home and I do my best. I can't talk to 800,000 people, so I try to do everything that I can. Say, hey, this is what I know. Total transparency. This is what I've seen. This is what I've heard. Touch, taste, feel, and smell. So take this with everything else that you've heard and make your educated perspective decision and go from there.
So has there been anything that has shocked you or surprised you about being in Congress? Like, and I don't know if you're aware, I was mayor of Belton for 8 years, and I would remember people would come up and sometimes they'd say things, and inside I just wanted to roll my eyes because I don't think they heard what everyone else was hearing, or that someone would interpret something that was so totally different than what it was meant. Has there been anything that just really shocked you, or you thought was, wow, that's just crazy?
I always try to expect the unexpected. So as far as the shock and awe factor of it, I have been pleasantly surprised, good or bad, and some of the things that have made it to the federal level. Like we voted on prairie chickens. Like, why is this? Why are we voting this? And there's certain things that make it to the floor that in my opinion, take away from what we need to be focusing on. And to be surprised, I was surprised how much of that actually happens. Like, this is a state issue.
Yeah.
Good or wrong, why are we voting on this? And when we have to take time away from the House business to focus in on those silly things, that's surprising to me. But hey, that's part of it. It is
part of the process. It's messy.
Yeah, and I think another one that surprises me is how the parties can and cannot coalesce, and how they can engage with each other on certain topics and how they will not. I mean, there can be something that will hit that House floor, 435 people come together, and the entire country will. And then there's some things that it is shocking, and it is right down party lines. And that's unfortunate because, in my opinion, some of it is like, hey, look, now, this isn't one of those things that we need to be partisan on. We need to come together with this, but that's just sometimes not how it's not how it is. It's like,
So just sort of wrap up, and we really appreciate you being our first person. But, I hear a lot as party chair from people, they're disillusioned again because of, the elections, and they feel like that, people in Washington D.C. forget about them. Um, and I've heard from people that are like, I just don't want to bother voting. There is a feeling, and this is speaking to the base, but to people who are independent who are watching, and I can see why they believe this. There's a feeling like sometimes there's two different systems. There's two, that it's not fair and equitable. Whether you believe in Trump or Biden or whatever, there is a feeling that, their government maybe has forgotten about them. And I do hear like, well, why even bother to vote? And you know, you risk your life for a country. Your brother risked his life. Your family has gone through this. And now as a congressman and a Republican one in a conservative district, what would you tell people? And this is really speaking to people as Americans. What would you tell them?
I would start out with I would start the conversation with if you don't value your right to vote, you need to travel to a country that they don't have that right. Like when I was in Iraq one time, the citizens were coming in to vote, and they clapped out a suicide bomb, killed 300 people. It's something that before, when we didn't have that right, or you had to fight to have that right, then generationally we've come to accept the fact that, hey, look, I can do that, so I'm just not going to. I can appreciate that, the numbness to it, but I would explain to those like, hey, this is how our country is what it is, because you have the right to go out and pick who you think most likely, most directly represents your belief systems, and that's how we keep the country the way that we want. And given the body count that we have, 330 million people climbing, that is so many different personalities. That's so many different perspectives on everything. And then you put 435 people together to try to govern. If you don't put the right ones up there, it will either go left, too far right, or will absolutely go nowhere. And the numbers that we're seeing, not only in the primary but the general elections that come out and exercise their right to do that, is so small, it's saddening. I don't have any other way to say it, but it's their right not to do that. So, but we should be doing that. I think if the country would start to activate and come to vote, I think that the divisiveness the polarization of the parties will start to come like this.
The will of the people.
Will be.
Thanks, Morgan.
Absolutely. Pleasure.